you've also been in Arizona, and Frank and I have laughed a little bit about the Cardinals over the course of this offseason because I feel like Arizona's just sort of forgotten. I just don't feel like anybody's really talking about them one way or the other. So, what did you walk away from Glendale thinking of expectations for this Cardinals team?
It's funny too that Arizona's forgotten because, had they not finished 2-5 last year, I mean, people forget that, through the first 10 games of the season, I think they were 6-4, and they were actually way above people's expectations. And they were a team that, was staring at, pressing for a playoff run. And then they go 2-5 in the final, 7 games. And obviously they lose some really disappointing games in that stretch. I think they lost 4 division games in that final 7 games. And, they bottom out still, though. I think I believe 8-9 was still above expectations for where the Cardinals were last season. What I think is interesting when you look at the Cardinals, though, is I went in here 3 years ago, met with Jonathan Gannon, the head coach, met with general manager Monti Ossenfort, and they were like, look, here's how we're going to build the team. We're going to get rid of a lot of guys. Okay. Right now we're going to slash some guys who have been paid. We're going to slash some guys who have been high picks here, because they're not about our culture. They're not about where we want to go with this. There's going to be a very specific way we want to build and a very specific type of football player we want to build with. And it was very much we're going to build this team through the draft. We're going to take, we'll take our shots in free agency, but they're going to be very targeted. In terms of the money, we're not going to strap ourselves to long-term money that's going to hurt us. I come in 3 years later after hearing that, and I start to look at things and I go, okay, let me look at the dead money situation. Man, they're like 30th in the league in dead money. There's almost no dead money for the Cardinals. I'm like, let me look at their cap situation. They're in a great situation. They have money to roll over into 2026 if they don't extend some guys in 2025. So they're in great shape from a salary cap standpoint. And then when you look at the actual roster itself, it's laced up and down with players that they've drafted, players that they've brought in, some very economic free agent signings. They haven't strapped themselves to a massive amount of money other than Kyler Murray, which again was not their, that's not this regime's ultimate decision. They came in and are taking over for that money. And so I think it is low key, like the Cardinals should, given what their base of talent is, if everyone's healthy, particularly along the defensive line, they should be a team that can potentially push for, let's say, I don't know, a 10-7 season, which might be able to get you into the playoffs.
Well, that's a huge season for the Cardinals.
It is. Yeah, it is. And, but look, the things that could potentially hold them back, there's questions along the offensive line, like almost every other team in the league. I think when you get beyond Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, there's, okay, who's our next pass receiver here? People point at Michael Wilson. Michael Wilson might be a 2B, a 3A. I think they still want a very impactful number 2 wideout. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's something they continue to look for moving forward. And then it's Kyler. And
that's
Kyler
where
Murray,
it is. I was wondering if you're going to get to that.
Right.
Because what's the ceiling with Kyler Murray at this point? Like, it's at some point, it's like, I think we've seen Kyler Murray. I just don't think there's another level here. Do you? Like, I kind of wonder about that.
Every season, off season, I've come in here for 3 straight years. It's been like a referendum year for Kyler Murray. It's like, okay, this is the year where, but I really, truly I believe we're there now, because what they have now done, this regime has said, okay, we're going to get him better in really 2 distinct ways. We're going to improve the talent around him, give him the best possible offensive teammates as a unit to play with. Marvin Harrison Jr., I think he's up to like 220. He's gained weight. Like he looks thicker, looks stronger. But again, he hasn't gotten any faster, right? Like he's going to be, as a route tactician, that's really how Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to get better as he moves forward. But I think they're confident in him taking another step as their number 1 wideout. Trey McBride has the ability to be one of the, elite tight ends. He showed it last season. He can be there with Kelsey, Kittle, Bowers. Like he's in that group from a pass catching standpoint. They're going to run the ball a heck of a lot with James Conner and Trey Benson. But they've augmented the offense a little bit for Kyler too, in that they're like, okay, if the offensive line isn't perfect, we're going to move the pocket more. We're going to try and roll out, Kyler at times. We're going to give him an opportunity to make plays, not necessarily inside the box. There's, I think, again, the running component of Kyler's game is going to be accentuated. So Is it a referendum season for Kyler? Yeah, I think it is, because they're like, look, we're improving the pieces around you. Now we need you to make the decisions, given some tweaking of the offense. We need you to make the right decisions downfield. And Jonathan Gannon said to me, he made a golf analogy. He's like, look, it's just, we're giving him the whole bag of clubs. We just need him to choose the right club for the right situation when he's making throws and decisions. That's ultimately going to determine, whether or not this is a make or break season.
Right. And I mean, cynically, I already think we've had the referendum season on Kyler Murray. I think this
I
is who he
understand
is.
that.
Like, if he shows another level, I'll reevaluate. But
I get
at
that.
this point, this is his 7th season already.
7th season. He's
It's
entering his
crazy.
7th
It doesn't
season.
seem like it, but
Right.
there's just not been a lot there. And I get it. He tore his ACL and that set him back. And he hasn't had the best teammates.
Been a lot of
and
injuries.
a
and
lot of, the coaching stuff and blah, blah, blah. So maybe, but I just feel like, and you kind of alluded to this, Charles, of like, we kind of hear this every year at this time. Like,
Right.
This is what we're doing for Kyler. This is why he's going to have a breakout. And by your 7th season, kind of are who you are. That's my opinion. We'll see.
I think that what keeps them coming back too, and what I think, let's say Kyler Murray even had a slightly above average season this year, and he was made available next offseason. I think teams would be interested. And I think what keeps people coming back on Kyler Murray is go back and look at the Rams game last season. I think it was, early on in the season, and then the 49ers game to wrap the season, albeit against the 49ers team that didn't have a lot to play for, nothing to play for really at that point.
And they're beat up too. Yeah.
His highs are his good games are just, you watch the Rams game, you're sitting there, you're watching him and you're saying he is elite. This is like a top 3-4 type of game in football right now when he puts it all together. Now, the Rams didn't have their full complement of players. It wasn't the Rams team at the beginning of the season that it necessarily was at the end of the season. But again, it's just that his highs, his ceiling is so crazy and so much fulfilling of why he became the number 1 pick in the draft. The problem is his lows are still way too low. And when you talk to people in the organization, what they tell you is our biggest thing is that can we raise the floor on him? Can we raise those lows to adequate? If they're like, if we can just raise those lows to adequate and then pair them with the games where he has those highs, he will climb up that board of, when you're ranking your quarterbacks in the league and is more of a top 10 guy than maybe a top 15, 16 guy. And I think they think if we can get him to being a top 10 guy, Jalen Hurts in some circles, arguably a top 10 guy, right? And you had to build a lot of things around him in terms of the Eagles to, turn him into, I think, the Super Bowl winning quarterback that he was, having the running game, having the defense the way that it was, having that offensive line. I mean, Jalen Hurts has a wealth of things around him that have helped him, really achieve that lofty status. I think the Cardinals are looking at that as a similar situation to Kyler Murray.
It's tough for me because I say all the time, context matters when we see performance from players. So coaching injuries, all of those things matter until at some point, to Frank's point, it doesn't. At some point, it's just like, this is who you are and this is what your situation is. And, I hate the phrase injury prone because I don't really think somebody is injury prone, but sometimes bad things just continually happen to certain players. Sometimes the situation just is what it is. Like, I think there's important context to why we are sort of sitting here with Kyler saying, and that's fair. I just don't know that he ever breaks out of that context to me. Like, it's just going to be continually some level of it. That being said, it's still better than taking a stab at the apple in the draft, which might not help anybody either way.
Well, Fitz, and here's the thing too. I think you could argue that they've already left quarterbacks on the board when you go back and you look, particularly when, you look back at the 2004 draft, right? Or 2024 draft, the multitude of quarterbacks that got drafted in 2024, you could have left a good quarterback on the board in 2024 when you ultimately stuck with Kyler Murray. You could make the argument at that time for passing, right? But now we're getting to the point where, as Frank said, we're in year 7. You kind of are what you are in year 7. And if he shows in year 7 that he is what he is, if he just sort of replicates the Kyler Murray experience we've seen in the past, I don't know that you can necessarily pass on a quarterback in the 2026 NFL draft. And that's a point that I made, to some in the front office. I said, look, every year is a referendum year for Kyler. The difference is this is year 7. It's another referendum year. and you have another draft that potentially could have 4, 5, maybe 6 quarterbacks drafted in the first round, depending on how the college football season plays out, I don't know that you can once again pass yet again on a number of quarterbacks, and that's going to be pressed against how Kyler performs this season. Everyone's going to be talking about those quarterbacks that could be first round picks in 2026.
I think the problem with that, though, is Arizona's not going to be bad enough to get one of those quarterbacks. They're going to be pretty good. Like I when I was doing the Cardinals preview, I was like, there's a lot to like about this team. We kind of forget because of the way they finished, right? Like they finished poorly, but then you look back and you're like, well, this team doubled its win total from the year before, and why can't they be? I mean, even if you improved to 9 wins, okay. With Kyler being the 16th best quarterback in the NFL, you're not drafting a guy there. You're not going to draft. They're stuck. They're a little stuck that way, and I worry about that with them, that they just get stuck in the worst place to be in the NFL. I've said this a lot often, is right in the middle of quarterback. If you bat a quarterback, you just move on. Who cares? Whatever. We're going to be drafting 5th in the draft, and we'll draft whoever, whatever quarterback flavor of the month in the draft. If you're really good at quarterback, you pay that guy and you're happy. If you're in the middle, you just talk yourself into it year after year after year because you can't draft anybody better. And here's a guy who's at least okay. And maybe if we pull off a Philadelphia Eagles and we draft like Howie Roseman, we can make him Jalen Hurts. Like, I guess, like it doesn't happen too often. So I just worry for the Cardinals that they're just kind of going to be stuck in this, like, we're not really contenders, but we're not bad enough to tank. We're not going to get a quarterback. We got Kyler. That's a bad place to be in the NFL sometimes.